Back in the 1980s into the 90s and 2000s, there was one guy who had the stuff. American males, various title wins and tag team titles. Buff Bagwell at one point was the pretty boy of WCW, or what they call the NWA territories. In recent years, he came upon some bad luck, but the good news is he hasn't died in this. But the bad news is that Buff Bagwell, because of complications from an accident many years before, has revealed this week he had his leg amputated above the knee. Now, according to WrestleZone.com, through Bill Pritchard, Buff Bagwell is still feeling the effects of his past behavior, as it has now cost him his leg. Maven, his former, what he called WWE mate, latest vlog features a visit with Buff, but it's not under the best of circumstances. Maven traveled several hundred miles to visit Buff because he was having his right leg amputated. On July 10th, Bagwell had what he said he nicely called an AKA, above the knee amputation. Bagwell explained that in August of 2020 he was driving under the influence. He was drinking the night prior and took prescription medication the next morning, even pointing out he drank a Diet Coke since he knew he'd been operating a vehicle. Bagwell ended up getting in a serious accident, blacking out as he drove his car through a bathroom behind a Marietta, Georgia mall. Bagwell says the accident caved in his kneecap. He had other injuries, including a black eye and shoulder injury, but the wreck had shattered his knee. When you hear knee replacement, you think he'll get a new knee, but you got to have your kneecap, and I didn't have my kneecap. My kneecap, my doctor said on impact, exploded. It wasn't there. Now, Buff Bagwell did confirm many months ago he had dozens of surgeries on his leg to try to fix it. Buff Bagwell says he believes he messed up with an initial operation to fix his leg. He says one doctor told him he had a 75% chance of losing it, and he's had what he estimates to be 30-something surgeries to try and fix the problem. There was a 7-week stay early on in 2020 where there were 21 surgeries, Buff said. Bagwell says no one ever mentioned amputation besides the original doctor. He continued going to doctors, and one gave him a 20% chance of keeping his leg. He would have to have 3 different surgeries, hours of physical therapy, and his leg would have remained straight for the rest of his life, like you couldn't bend it. Now, Bagwell has stated he's happy to be sober and wants to get back in the ring someday. Bagwell believes everything happens for a reason, and he doesn't believe he would be sober if he didn't have the leg injury in the first place. I'd rather be sober right now with the situation than Buff Bagwell and WCW making money in the funk I was in. I'd much rather have this life. After procedure, Buff said he wants to learn how to run and get back into the ring. Now, it'll show that I've come out of the darkness with this thing and I've turned it around all the way to being back in the ring as Buff Bagwell. You don't have to give up with something like this. I am taking it by the horns, and I am going to show the world they can just have just as good of a life with or without the leg. Now, for a lot of people, Buff Bagwell was probably comparing, Ravishing Rick Rude, one of the most female-friendly wrestlers of the modern era, and his famous pose when he would come out, with the hat and hitting the pecs. Now, Marcus Alexander Bagwell, again, that was his full name. He used it as a wrestling name for a while. Great name, by the way. He's best known for appearances with WCW for 10 years, from 1991 to 2001, where he's a 5-time World Tag Team Champion. Now, Missy Hyatt discovered him and helped him break into wrestling business. Growing up, Bagwell was a stand-up baseball player during his tenure at Strayberry High School and worked for his family's lumber company. Upon graduating from high school, he started an amateur boxing career. When the lumber company went bankrupt, he became a certified massage therapist before deciding to become a wrestler. Now, he trained under Steve Lawler and debuted in 1990, working for North Georgia Wrestling as Fabulous Fabian. In 1991, he began wrestling for GWF, Global Wrestling, as a handsome stranger, a gimmick suggested by Demolition Axe that saw Bagwell don a Lone Ranger-style mask and held out roses to the female fans. So he was also known as Christian for a while, and Marcus Bagwell. 6'1", at his best weight, probably 245, solid. Now, in 1991, Bagwell was hired by WCW, and the rest became history. He wrestled under his full name without the hat. He made his WCW debut in a non-televised match, losing to Mike Graham. He then would wrestle a tryout match on Remembrance Day, November 11th, and made his televised debut as a fan favorite at Clash of Champions 17, where he's interviewed by Missy Hyatt. He made his televised in-ring debut by defeating former Atlantic Grand Prix wrestler Rip Rogers on December 14 episode of World Championship Wrestling. He made his pay-per-view debut at Starrcade, where he's paired with Jimmy Garvin against Michael P.S. Hayes and Tracy Smothers in a lethal lottery match where he and Garvin won after Bagwell hit Smothers with the fisherman suplex to qualify for the Battle Bowl. Now, various tag teams through the years, including Tom Zink for a while, and he was part of Stars and Stripe again and American Males. Now, the tag team was his best, and he was part of the New World Order for 3 years, and also as part of the New Blood. Now, he did have a tryout match with WWE or WWF, taking on Booker T, but it didn't really work. He was World Wrestling All-Stars for a while, and was in TNA on and off for 3 years, and also in on the independent circuit. Now, the various titles he held in WCW for tag team, he is pretty well, I think, considered a top 20 tag team wrestling star of that era. Now, I want to go over this very quickly. American Males, the famous theme song with Scotty Riggs. Bagwell, their gimmick was one of two pretty boys, were fond of their own bodies and popular with women. Riggs was Bagwell's third partner with whom he won the WCW World Tag Team title, the previous two being Too Cold Scorpio and the Patriot. The American Males won the tag team title soon after they began teaming together, but soon dropped to the Harlem Heat, the previous champions. Bagwell and Riggs did not return to main event status, and eventually split up and feuded with each other. But when this was hot, they were very, very popular tag team. Now, unfortunately, they were no longer being pushed by WCW by mid-90s. They did compete in tag teams in 96, but it had no storylines and never had the same success. Now, following the breakup of the tag team, the former partners feuded for a while, with Bagwell getting the better of Riggs. Riggs would go on to briefly feud with Raven, later joined the Flock, while Bagwell formed Vicious and Delicious with IWGP champion Scott Norton before suffering severe neck injury that kept him out of action for a while when he was almost paralyzed while in the Steiners. He later returned to WCW, teaming with Shane Douglas to win another tag team title. After losing the title, he formed another tag team, pairing with Lex Luger to form Totally Buffed. When Riggs joined the ECW in 2000, he did a parody American Males gimmick by calling himself the U.S. Male and using their overhead clap taunt. So Marcus Alexander Bagwell, I really believe he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And this is why. If you look at the Pretty Boys and the tag team Pretty Boys of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, get me another Buff Bagwell. When you have the Pretty Boy tag teams of the modern era, they're ripping off Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs as well. But all I can say, if there's any friends or family that listen to this podcast and can give Buff Bagwell a message for his fans in Canada, I want to say this directly. You are appreciated within Canada. You are a good wrestler. You're very big in Quebec and the Maritimes because you kind of harken back with Sweet Daddy Siki and those type of wrestlers, that were fan favorites. Even Macho Man in the early years when he was wrestling with his brother Leapin' Landy in AGWP. I have never met you, Buff. I'm very regretful I didn't, but I know for the fact we love you in Canada, and I wish you the speediest recovery. And an amputation is not in your life. My life was saved by an amputation on my big toe on my left foot a few years ago. Nothing compared to you, Buff, but again, we hear you. And Super Genie is looking down and with Sabu and saying, please take care of Buff in these tough time. And all I can say, you're the stuff, man. Wish you the best. And Maven, thank you for supporting your friend, and thank you for you to do wrestling with your various videos and support of the wrestling era you are part of. Thanks for listening, and peace, love. Say like Ringo Starr. Bye.